Jeff. Duke back here, and Mayor Forthover is joining us from the Mayor of Vermillion to show support and to discuss the chances of Vermillion coming into 6119.
Okay. Well, good morning. I'm Lou McMahon. My firm is McMahon DeGullis. We have offices in Cleveland, Columbus, and Cincinnati. And my office is in Cleveland on Huron Road. But I'm also a very happy resident of Sheffield Lake. So I'm very glad to be here and talk about this process that's been underway since last summer and where it's going. So next slide, please. So there's an just as a quick overview of what we're going to talk about. I want to talk about, again, remind everybody what this 6119 is, what the public processes are that lead to the formation of that, an establishment of such a district, what types of analyses that have been underway and have been done to date, and what is the anticipated timeline for proceeding. This becomes very public very soon because you're creating a new government. This is essentially what's going on. So next slide, please. This is right out of the statute. The 6119 is a political subdivision, sort of like a special purpose government, the way a Metro Parks is, or a school board, or anything like that. It is a government under the statutes of Ohio. It can be, under the statute, it can be for water, wastewater, stormwater. What's focused on here is a regional wastewater treatment 6119. There's existing 6119s in this county. Lorco is a 6119 that was established in the 1990s. So again, what's focused on here is not water, not stormwater, but a regional wastewater 6119 entity. Next slide, please. This is the process right out of the statute. So while there have been a lot of discussions for the last year, and it takes a lot of analysis, I'll get into that, of how you get to this, it becomes very public when you create a new government. You have to, in this process, petitioners, or those who are willing to go forward with creating this, need to have, even before they ever go to court, they need to have a public hearing. And they have to take the comments from that public hearing and consider them. And then they have to file a petition with the Common Pleas Court. The Common Pleas Court then has processes it can do. It can have a preliminary hearing if it's requested. It can have a final petition if everything is in place with the plan and everything, which is then a court hearing where people can come and express their opinion about it. But that's after the public hearings that happen among the petitioners. So it's the plan and petition pretty much have to be out there in place before you ever go to court, and then it's a public process in court to create this government. Next slide, please. This is sort of a flow chart that gives the same thing I had out of the statute. Again, there's a provision right in the statute that anytime, if there's a preliminary hearing, anytime after that, the court can ask for changes to a feasibility study that is necessary for the court to be able to find that this is beneficial and necessary for the general welfare. So again, it becomes a very public process. But leading up to that, it's a very complex process with a lot of different analyses about legal, financial, what assets could do, what regulatory compliance issues there may be, and that's what's been underway. Next slide, please. I'm sorry. This is part of the public hearing that would lay all that out in detail. Again, this is in the statute that you have to have a public hearing before you ever approach the court, and these are the elements that have to go in there. At the meeting, the petitioners have to lay it all out, show the public and anybody interested what is going on, and then take those comments and consider them and revise as necessary before they go to court. All right, so the next slide are the types of analyses that have been going on. You know, approval of this requires a detailed plan. You have to show that this new entity, what it's going to do, what it's going to own, how it's going to be financially viable, where it's going to operate, what its specific area is, and why it's beneficial and necessary for the public. So here we're looking at a regional wastewater utility that would only include willing political subdivisions that would look at some regional assets and optimizing where those regional assets could operate better as a regional entity. And then also be in position for analyzing future growth in the county and economic development, again, among willing participants. So you can't create this. Ohio law excludes any municipality. You can't be forced into a 6119. It's only willing participants that would be in the entity. And then it would be positioned to do studies as to, maybe on a broader scale of analysis as to where future assets are optimum, what's the best, lowest cost way to go forward on certain things. So, next slide, please. The goals of the participants who have been involved in this, again, it's taking this very complex things. How can we optimize existing assets by people who want to participate in that and look at and be in position for future possibilities? And so the ultimate goal is to maintain the lowest wastewater treatment of a regional entity. This is a treatment-focused wastewater entity, not a collection system entity. That would still, collection systems and local questions about economic development would remain with the local governments. This would be, how do we put in position long-term, low-cost wastewater treatment for sanitary flow that can serve in the future for a growing county? Where can we put those assets? What's optimum? What does the law allow? Where is regulation going for environmental regulation that a regional entity might be able to meet? How can we optimize existing assets, again, and how can we plan for the future? I think it's important to note that these goals are really aligned. This is a very ripe moment with the state of Ohio's goals for how they want to approach infrastructure and particularly wastewater. Ohio has, as part of their Ohio EPA, in their looking at resiliency, has looked at regionalization of small plants. In their view, a number of small plants is something, if you have something catastrophic, it's more difficult to get a bunch of small plants online than a large one. One large one, they can focus their energies on that. You can have redundancy at a large plant. You can have, the other part that Ohio EPA is looking at is increasing regulation. Things like PFAS or nutrient regulation that are coming down the pike and staring at us are very difficult to do on a bunch of small plants. PFAS control measures or removal measures are going to be very expensive. And if you're going to do those, it's much better to get the economy of scale at regional plants to those. So the state is very much supporting regionalization of small plants into regional plants. And then the other part that the state's very interested in is economic development and regional master planning. How do we position ourselves to get sewers in particular, in this case, and other infrastructure into those places that can help the state and local governments attract large entities? The obvious example is Intel in Columbus, other things like that. How do we get ourselves in position where we have available land, but the utilities aren't there, as these large entities are looking to land in shorter time frames? The state is very interested in that. So an entity like this can be in position to, again, optimize something today, but be in position to do master planning for how you can deliver that in other parts of the county where there's willing participants. Next slide, please. So the next steps, again, all this analysis is going on because you have to have a very detailed plan. It has to pencil out. The math has to work, right? It's got to be viable, and you got to show that it's going to be viable when it's created. And so that analysis is undergoing work right now. The parties that may be involved have to sometimes look at, are there interests in real estate that need to be transferred? Are there legal agreements that have to be in place for certain assets? That is the analysis that's going on right now. Once that's all coalesced into something complete, then the process becomes very, very public. And all that has to be put, like I said, before the public, reviewed, everyone kicks the tires on it. Anybody who's interested will be able to look at it, critique it, and then it would go to court. Our hope is that if we can get all that together, that even this fall there would be public hearings, and that there may be a filing with the court by the end of the year. But that's all subject to getting all of our work done and agreements among the willing participants. So, just in summary, go to the last slide, please. What is a 6119? This is a special purpose government, but here it would be created only by willing participants, those who want to be in it. No one will be forced to be in that. What are the public processes that are going to happen? As I mentioned, there'll be public hearings, or at least one public hearing with detailed explanation of what is being presented, and then there's court proceedings after that. What types of analyses? A lot of financial analyses, including long-range projections. You got to figure out how do you accommodate debt, what projects have to be done, are there transfers of assets or interests? All that is being worked on right now. And then what is the anticipated timeline? Again, hopefully this fall, this will all coalesce and we'll be in position to have public hearings specifically on what is being proposed before then maybe getting to file in court before the end of the year. That's the summary I have. I don't know, Jeff, if you had anything else or if you...
Mayor Forthover might want to add because his comments, we've been working with the city of Vermillion through the process, and the first meeting, I think, Mayor, that was an impromptu with city council, and one of the city councilmen, can we move it tonight? There's a whole process we had to go through over there too, is to process it.
That's correct. That's absolutely correct. And thank you, Commissioners. First of all, Commissioner Rydell.
Welcome, Mayor.
Welcome, Mayor.
Pardon?
I say welcome, Mayor.
Well, thank you. Yes, I am Jim Forthover, Mayor of the City of Vermillion, small town on a Great Lake. This is my 7th year as mayor. I often tell people I had to retire to find the best job I ever had. It's a beautiful city. I mean, the people are just fantastic. Anyone who comes to Vermillion, particularly this time of year, is just taken aback by its beauty and its quaintness, its history. But like many northern older cities, it has an infrastructure that is direly in need of attention. We have both a water plant and a wastewater plant. And the wastewater plant is conspicuously in need of help. I think it was last seriously updated probably when the Browns were playing Baltimore in the playoffs in 1962 or something like that. But recently, about 3 years ago, the federal U.S. EPA came to Vermillion and said, you are under a mandate that you have to effectively, completely renovate and rehab that entire plant. It's almost like building a new plant in place. Estimated cost is about $76 million. We have less than 5,000 households. This is a heavy, heavy burden for the people of Vermillion. Now, about a year ago, County Administrator Armbruster and Commissioner Moore came to the city of Vermillion council meeting and proposed the idea of the regional, or described the idea of the proposed regionalization of wastewater, and that Vermillion would be invited to join it. The city council immediately embraced the idea, as did the administration. And the residents, I actually have yet to find a resident who doesn't think this is a good idea. And I want to be clear, there is a selfish, immediate reason why Vermillion would want to become part of the proposed 6119, which is to help get us out from under some of the cost of this current mandate. But being the guy who's in charge of the vision for the city of Vermillion, I'm telling you that this city is going to grow. It's the last exit off of Route 2 heading west that has not yet been fully developed. And we have big projects regularly knocking on our door. There's one right now that would increase the population of the town by about 10 to 15%. And although we may have the capacity within our own facility, as old as it is, to handle that, down the road, this city needs to consider an alternative to bearing its own infrastructure. And I think the idea of a regionalized wastewater infrastructure to begin with is an excellent idea, and it's perfectly fit for communities like Vermillion, who are growing and have to reconsider exactly how we feed these services and whether or not our tax base can handle it. It's a good idea, and I think it's one that perfectly fits Vermillion. So we welcome the discussions we've had with Administrator Armbruster and his team. We encourage the commissioners to favorably consider the next steps in development of this. And the city of Vermillion will be looking with interest at where the next steps go, and we'll be happy to feed to the federal US EPA the fact that we are interested in this and hopefully share with them some of the progress that we're having so that we can start looking toward the future instead of having to go back and fix our past. So, thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
I think for those of us that are involved in this process, we're struck by two goals that are accomplished. And those two goals are driven from the fact that we, the people of the northern, especially the northern part of the state, have decided that we want to clean up Lake Erie, and we want to make sure that it stays that way and keep it from getting any new problems. The EPA's part of that process is they would like to limit the number of entities that are distributing waste into Lake Erie and elevate the level of treatment. And as the mayor just said, that they have capacity in their plant, but they do not have the ability to provide all of the treatment that is available and that we would want in order to keep Lake Erie the way it is. So the beneficiary of the 6119 is not only the people in cleaning up Lake Erie, but in regionalizing for economic development and making sure that we can provide that component to people that want to come to Lorain County. But our existing entities already are facing, Vermillion is not the only one facing this problem. We have several other communities in Lorain, and they've not volunteered to come forward, so we won't mention their names yet, but they're operating under some sanctions and problems with the EPA. And the 6119 is all about the processing of the waste. Everybody else, they can bring whatever they want to the plant, but it's elevating the quality of what we put back into Lake Erie. The benefit for the residents, and that they should consider when creating another new government entity, which is not always a popular concept, is that there are huge economies of scale in the sewage treatment business, the wastewater treatment business. That's why the little plants take $78 million to get up to snuff, and we have other communities facing the same thing. But we can deliver lower cost sewage treatment to all the residents of Lorain County, and we can do it on an equitable basis. In a perfect world, if we had the whole county involved, everybody in the county would pay the same for their wastewater, and for many, it would be less than what they're currently paying. So, yeah, it's not a very romantic subject. It's not always popular to create a new government entity, but I applaud our management team for persevering through all of that noise and helping us make Lorain County not only a great place to visit, but a great place to move here and build your factory and put our residents to work. So thank you for the presentation, and Mayor, thank you for putting yourself out there for us. We appreciate that. Anything else you want to add, Jeff? Please say no.
We want to move this process quickly. We needed to get it done, and it's going to change the face of Lorain County back to where it was when the steel plants came in and Ford came here. I mean, we're really excited about it, all of us on the team, and I know the three of you are very excited about it too.
Yeah. I don't know if excited is the correct word, but determined. And I would remind you, Jeff, that in this process, that building a consensus is important. And so since P comes before Q in the alphabet, let us be prudent and as quick as we can.
Will keep me on track.
I don't think we can afford this. I don't think we have the luxury of thinking that everybody has the same level of knowledge on the subject as those of you that are carrying the load. Thank you.
Mr. President, problem I have is I've already built the wastewater treatment plant. It's already functioning.
Oh, okay.
In my mind.
Lou, I had a question on, when you were up here talking, you brushed on it very quickly, and then I looked at the paperwork to see if it was on there. if an event, there was a catastrophic event, can you just expand a little more on that, because you went by it quickly?
Yeah, I went by everything quickly, my apologies. So, yeah, this is Ohio EPA mentioned this in last August when you had the kickoff meeting. So the federal government has asked, the federal EPA has asked all the states that implement the Clean Water Act to look at resiliency questions. So what does it mean to be more resilient? The question that Ohio has seen during some major flooding events in the last 10, 15 years, we have larger storms than we've had in the past, is that, they have difficulty going to small towns and areas and trying to get little package plants in particular, or small city plants, up and running. There's not a lot of redundancy. There's not a lot of, large plants have to have redundant power supply, for example. That's been in place since the blackout. Not smaller plants don't have all the same obligations that large plants do. The personnel that would be available, if you have a large regional entity, they would have personnel who are available and able to get there. A lot of package plants, a lot of small plants are not manned every day of the week. And there's actually a shortage of certified operators in the state. So if you regionalize, you can have all the qualified people and the number of people that you need to respond quickly. Those are some of the things that the state has cited when they talk about resiliency through regionalization.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
Comments. I had a meeting with KEM on Wednesday and met with them in regards to they're doing the work for us along Baumhart Road, which is where a lot of this started. And as I said, like, sometimes it's just dumb luck we get to that. Vermillion had a need, and we were working on the west side of our county's production. One of the things I asked them to perform, and they should have that in about a month, is the cost per acre. And that what they're doing is, how can we get the developers, because let's face it, if this system does, which I know will come in and get pulled off, it comes back to saying, how are we going to pay for it? And that's my thing, is how do we sit there, and that's what they're going to start working on for me, and well, at least I've asked them to do that for Jeff, is to get them the information to show how we can get shared private and public dollars together to at least complete it. Because right now, at the end of the day, we could have the greatest plan in the world, but if we don't have the funding. And so I know they're in the process of working on that, and no, that's okay. I just want to let you know that's what I'm more worried about between not really Vermillion's aspect to it, but all the way down to the quarries, which is what we're looking at. At least that's what the original plan. We used ARPA dollars 2 years ago to investigate.
Well, what Red Talis is doing for us, and Jeff Duke is here, I mean, they have a complete
analysis.
You really need to hear it since
Yeah, I do. I just, like I said, it was
Jeff Duke from Red Talis.
right. I don't mind. The more experts we have talking, the better off we're going to be.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
I'm Jeff Duke. I'm a principal consultant with Raftelis. I'm actually, I live in Brook Park, Ohio.
That's okay. We'll let that slide.
Okay. But my brother is in Lorain County. But I used to work for the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District for 30
Okay.
years. So I have a little bit of familiarity with 6119 development and expansion, and that's part of what I'm working on with Raftelis. So Raftelis, we're a nationwide financial utility management consulting firm. And what we've done with Lorain County, working with Lou, working with Matt at K.E. McCartney, we've developed a financial model that allows us to support the 6119 development scenarios, such as Baumhart Road. So I assume I'll be following up with Matt. I assume you met with Matt at K.E. McCartney there.
It's one of them.
Yeah. So what we'll be working on with the team here is to be able to provide that cost per acre, or maybe cost per treatment unit. So if a developer wants to come in and we'll provide so much flow to a new regional plant, we can kind of estimate what that cost for their services would be there. So
Well, I'm
that's
trying to
part
look
of
at
our-
the,
that's
I'm
part of
looking
our
at the
financial
overall
analysis.
project because I don't, right now, there's options being laid out all along Baumhart Road, right?
So yes, well, what we're trying to do is develop a model that will be flexible enough that whatever scenario happens down the road, or
Yeah.
you'll be able to look at multiple scenarios and see what the best situation will be. Some of our key inputs will be capital costs, such as what
Mm-hmm.
does the new Baumhart Road sewer cost? What does the new treatment plant cost, depending on things like the nutrient requirements and things like that moving forward? What would flows look like depending on Vermillion coming in and things like that? So we are looking at developing that tool to allow whatever analysis is needed to support, future decision-making.
Yeah, 'cause at the bottom line, it comes down to the money.
Yes, it
Okay.
does. So,
Yep, shared costs are great, thanks.
My understanding, Commissioner, is that there's also, between Public Works and the EPA, state and federal, there's also support, understanding that there's an upfront cost to this kind of transition that, it's hard for taxpayers to, pay for the future. They like to pay for today, but not the future. But the good news is there's a tremendous amount of government support that's available for this, but you gotta have the plan.
Right.
Gotta have the plan. Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the board?
I'm sure Vermillion needs their mayor back.
Okay.
So thanks. No, I'm just, I think you sit through enough meetings on your own. You don't want to sit through ours, do you?
Hey, it's Friday afternoon
Yeah.
for Vermillion. He needs to shed the sport coat and the tie.
Yeah. Thank you for coming in, Mayor. Yeah,
Thank you both for
thanks.
Thanks.